At first, I would just say that my initial intuition, let's put it that way, was very critical of this project. I had a steep learning curve. I wasn't familiar with all the technical intricacies and demands that this digital euro includes, but with time, I would say that after many meetings with the private sector and with other experts, I'm still not persuaded that it's a necessity, and I question the urgency that ECB is pushing this. First of all, just an observation. The public is not demanding the digital euro. Most people I speak with are relatively pleased and content with the current payment system. So this is not happening because of public pressure. That's how usually politics works. We react when the public is demanding something. On this issue, it's coming from the top down. And so I think the case really needs to be made persuasively, not just to us, but to the public at large. Speaking from Croatia, I can say there's hardly been any debate on this issue. The average citizen has no idea what the implications are, nor why this is now being considered. That's the political reality. In hindsight, it was the similar situation with the introduction of the euro itself. There was not widespread debate in Croatia before the currency was introduced over 2 years ago. So I think the experts have to keep this in mind as well, that in order for this to be politically feasible, they need to make the case to the public, and they haven't even started. I was last week at the ECB. There was a delegation from the European Parliament. We spent a day in Frankfurt meeting with the experts, and many of my questions remained unanswered. For example, just one example. When we discuss the costs, the potential costs, they range from different figures in the billions, but the ECB still does not have a precise number of how many businesses this will affect. It will be mandatory, just like cash. It will be mandatory for all businesses that are now currently allowing for digital payments. They will be required to adapt and to have the infrastructure for the digital euro. And we don't know the number. I asked precisely, what is the number of businesses this affects? And it's in the millions. It's clearly in the millions, but we don't know the answer. So if anyone who has experience with complicated and large-scale projects must be familiar with the procedure, and we must know these answers in advance, not later after decisions are made, but before, so we can make properly informed decisions. Stephen asked about the principle of the market, the free market. That's what ECR stands for. That's in the Prague Declaration. I would say what strikes me is we have obviously a potential conflict because the ECB is the regulator of the banks, and at the same time it in the future is proposing to provide a payment scheme which clearly could become a competition for national payment schemes that are in place now. So we would have the regulator providing a service alongside with companies, private sector companies that it is regulating. Now, this is really unprecedented, and the question is from a classical liberal viewpoint, is it the role, in principle, I'm just opening the question, is it the role of the central bank to provide retail payment schemes? Is that the role of the central bank? It's interesting that developed Western economies have decided not to introduce digital currency payment schemes. This includes the United States and Canada, but other countries as well. The only country up to date that has something similar is China. When one looks at the top 20 companies in the world, top corporations, most market, the highest valued companies on the market today, there are no European companies. So it's just a symptom that Europe is falling behind. We have the single market. We have many things in place to allow new companies to grow and emerge. So I ask another question: why, in the last 20 years, has a European competitor to Visa and MasterCard not emerged? Why hasn't this happened? Why has the private sector not been able to provide a solution and compete on the global level with American companies? Why has this not happened? The answer is very complicated. Many of the issues are in the Draghi report. But the reality is that the ECB, in my view, is introducing the digital euro from a position of weakness, not strength, weakness, because Europe is vulnerable. And that brings me to the sovereignty argument. That's really the main argument that's being made by the experts, that Europe is vulnerable. We do not have a company that can compete with the global giants. And because of this, it is necessary to have our own payment scheme, because we could imagine a future circumstance where Visa or MasterCard suddenly withdraw from Europe because of geopolitical pressure. And this also seems an unlikely scenario. And I think this sovereignty argument is really overstating the case. So I think in our discussions, the negotiating team, there's a lot of consensus that the private sector should be given more time to develop a solution. Now, when we talk about payments overall in Europe, 95% of transactions are nation-based, 95%. So cross-border, people traveling throughout Europe, we're talking about overall 5% of the transactions. And that's because it's such a low number, it's probably, I'm speculating, but it's probably one of the reasons the private sector has not come up with a solution, because there's not much financial interest. The calculation is just is not forceful enough for them to invest the money. But they're working on this, and in many meetings with banks, with the banking sector, they have told me that there has been a lot of progress in this area. And as we know, there is many direct payment schemes already in place and working in many countries. Out of the Eurozone, 13 of them have national payment schemes in place. Now, finally, I would just say also, as ECR, we have to take these concerns of citizens seriously, that their privacy potentially could be violated. We live in a post-COVID world where a lot of confidence and trust has been lost because many of the experts got the pandemic wrong, frankly. And that's the reality also that we live in politically. It's not just that many of our voters are hostile and skeptical to this. There is this concern because if the digital euro was introduced only for offline, there is technology that enables the digital euro to be used just offline. Then it remains anonymous. Then it really is like cash because there's no trace of the transaction. It's just between the merchant and the consumer. But that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing a full payment scheme where there is a trace, and the ledger would be in the European Central Bank. And many Someone's nodding his head. Perhaps I got that wrong, but the reality is that, in my view, offline schemes are actually like cash, and what we're discussing here is not exactly like that. And so if it will be mandatory, I think these answers need to be these questions need to be properly answered in advance, not later. And as a conservative, and on economics, I would say a liberal, classic liberal, I am concerned with the implications for the private sector. The limits in order to prevent potential bank runs and problems with deposits, this problem has not been, in my view, adequately addressed. The Bank of England has mentioned a limit of £20,000 for their digital scheme. In Europe, the number is much lower, much lower. But the question must be asked then: what, in a possible stressful situation, a crisis in the future, will these limits then be simply altered in order to prevent bank runs because people are scared of what's happening to their deposits? So many issues are at stake. I think it is very important in principle to have these discussions. There is a danger, in my view, for a distortion of the market, and that's why it's not a surprise that so much of the private sector is skeptical of this. But in the end, it's the ordinary citizen who should really decide and will benefit or not benefit from this. And I believe in Europe we have not begun to have a serious discussion. This perhaps is the beginning. Hopefully many of these talks today will be shared on social media so people can get informed. That's why we're doing this. But in my view, I still am of the opinion, as one economist stated, it seems to him that the digital euro is a solution looking for a problem. Thank you very much.